I don't know how Porter and I were able to walk inside the restaurant together. All I know is that I spent more or less 15 minutes trying to fix my face because I look like a mess because of crying and wallowing. Oh dear, where had the two of you been? Miss Darlene asked as she saw us. I smiled at her. We got a little lost, Miss Darlene. I took the solo seat on the farthest part of the table, just so I wouldn't be sitting beside Porter. And I thought it was a brilliant idea until I saw him taking the chair from in front of me and sitting just across me. Perfect. I glared at him and he just shrugged as he looked into the menu. I rolled my eyes and grabbed the menu forcefully, making Ina look at me in confusion. "Are you okay?" she asked. I let out a deep sigh and nodded. "I'm fine," I replied with eyes filled with fury on the menu. To be honest, I am so tormented after hearing those words from Porter. I never pegged him as the type to beg, but the way he told me he's willing to offer himself for me to Rick is a huge surprise. I would be lying if I said that my heart did not like what he said, but all those don't matter to me now. Yes, seeing him that sad and desperate hurt big time. But that doesn't mean I should have a change of heart. After all, the victim is me and my family. I ordered xiaolong bao and a bowl of wonton noodles. Miss Darlene ordered traditional Chinese drinks for all of us. She also insisted that she'll pay everything on the table. If I were she, I would just pass all the bills to the great Porter Dunn here. After all, he's a black. He's one of the wealthiest in Chicago. I'm sure he can afford to buy this restaurant if he wanted to. We all talk about our remaining plans for the rest of Miss Darlene's home. We're already done with the kitchen and we'll start with the master's bedroom tomorrow. We went on to tell Miss Darlene of what to expect and even asked her to pitch in some thoughts for us to design the bedroom based on her desires. It was all alright and light until Miss Darlene nodded at Porter, who was silent in front of me. He's got his arms crossed against his chest while he quietly listened to everything that we're talking about. Porter's building a house in Chicago. He'll avail for your services too. Miss Darlene beamed like she's the mother of Porter. I gave him a quick glance and saw him already staring at me. I raised my brow. "That is if you're free to design it, Graciela." Miss Darlene laughed as if to tease Porter. I looked at her and smiled. "I don't know about my schedule, Miss Darlene. I have a new project after this," I said and then smirked at Porter. He raised his brow but I could see how his jaw tightened. "Really? Who?" Miss Darlene asked delightedly. I smiled. "Lake Finch. I met him in the art exhibit and I will be designing his house soon." Miss Darlene's eyes widened. "Lake Finch? You mean you met Lake Finch in the art exhibit I asked you to go?" She asked in disbelief. I nodded. "I'm really sorry for using the name of Lake Finch now, but I just want to piss Porter off, and this is the only way I know that would definitely irk him up. Porter is a jealous guy. I know that because he's been jealous with the men who came near me, especially Jasper and Matthias. He hated when boys come to me, so I know that telling everyone that I am going to design Lake Finch house will definitely annoy him." I almost laughed at myself for being so childish. Damn it. "Oh my goodness, I envy you." Miss Darlene beamed, and so does some girls from my team. Ina nudged me and raised her brow. I know that she knows that I am lying because I already mentioned it to her that I saw the artist of the great painting of the Great Wall of China and that he asked me to design his new condo, but I was still contemplating on it. To be honest, I didn't want to do it because I really want to spend more time with Paul after this project with Miss Darlene. But for the sake of annoying Porter Dan, I would make it seem like I am going to accept the offer. Porter cleared his throat and moved his chair back a little. He smirked at me. It's okay. I am not really in a rush with the house. We're still working on the foundation. He pronounced the last word with emphasis, like he's trying to prove a point. I raised my brow at him and bit the inside of my cheek, a little irritated at the emphasis he just made. "Who are you going to live with your house, Mr. Dunn?" Rene asked. Porter smiled at Rene. "I'm kind of engaged, so that house will be mine and my fiancé's," he replied before his eyes darted on mine seductively. Gosh, how could he look at me like that in front of all these people? Miss Darlene laughed. "I heard you're engaged to Artemis Fuller. Congratulations," she beamed. I smirked at Porter, who seemed dumbfounded. I mean, is he stupid? Doesn't he know that all of America knows that he is engaged to Artemis? It was in the news, for Christ's sake. Well, I shrugged. I mean, it's good that you're futuristic with your fiancé. That's good. You must have planned to have a family soon. I looked at him mockingly. His stare at me darkened, but I can already see that he would not back down from this. As a matter of fact, he placed his elbows on the table and leaned closer to me with a nasty grin. "I have always been futuristic with her, Miss Fuller." I could hear Ina's gasp beside me and I pinched her forearm. "Oh, right. You're also a Fuller, Graciela. Are you related to Artemis?" she asked innocently. I swallowed before pursing my lips in a thin line. How was I to answer that question now? I looked at Porter, who also glanced back at me, seemingly not expecting what Miss Darlene just asked. He suddenly leaned back before clearing his throat. "For the record, I have never seen Graciela in any of the gatherings of the Fullers." So, he shrugged and then looked at me apologetically. I bit my inner lower lip before smiling at Miss Darlene. I don't know if they are aware of my identity. The death of my parents is all over the news before. Consequently, my name has been brought up several times in the media, but that was 5 years ago. Maybe they all have forgotten, or maybe they weren't really aware. I was already afraid to speak up after that, and I was so glad when the food came, so our topic diverted at the different Chinese foods, much to Miss Darlene's delight. When the dinner ended, I was so determined to ride a cab until Miss Darlene called me and told me that Porter will drive me home. What? I looked at Ina, who was just smiling meaningfully at me while going to Rene because he will be driving her home together with 3 other girls. I looked at Miss Darlene to explain that I can ride a cab, but she already waved at me to go to Porter. What the I didn't go anywhere near Porter nor his car because I was so determined to just wait for all of the people I know to drive away before hailing a cab. I looked at the street to see if there are cabs passing by, but to my surprise, I haven't seen any. I took my phone out and saw some messages from Paul asking me what time I will go home. I quickly sent him a reply that I am on my way before opening my Uber app. I typed in my address and waited for drivers to accept my booking, but to no avail. I repeated for 3 or 4 times, but not one time did a driver accept it. You can't find any Uber here. Porter suddenly spoke from behind me, making me jump in surprise. I looked at him and saw him peeping through my phone. I immediately locked it and kept it inside my bag. "I'm not riding with you," I told him with a stern voice. I could hear him sigh from behind me before walking to stand beside me. He placed his hands in his pockets. "I'm sorry for what I did earlier," he muttered silently. I looked at him and saw him looking down at his feet. He looked sullen and extremely remorseful. His jaw clenched as he swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to call you Miss Fuller. I was just upset that you're choosing to design someone else's house than mine." My lips parted due to a slight surprise at what he just said. He suddenly looked at me and there I saw the eyes of my son. I almost felt chills as I stared at them, so I had to look away. "It's okay," I replied, so the issue was over. It didn't matter to me anymore anyway. If they knew my real identity, then it's fine. I have showed myself with the France Gala. The people I am hiding from already know that I am back, so I have nothing to keep anymore. Well, there's one, but I know that he will be out in the open soon too. I went back to my Uber app again and tried to book another cab, only to fail again. I sighed and looked at Porter. Rare times would cabs drive in this area. And besides, riding a cab is dangerous. He narrowed his eyes. "I can't believe your cousin would make you ride one when he's too protective of you 5 years ago." I sighed. "It's different 5 years ago," I defended. "I am independent now." Porter shook his head. "Still not a good reason for you to take a cab," he said as if trying to scold me out here in the parking space. "You're a girl. You can't defend yourself from evil men." I am suddenly getting annoyed once again. "That's sexiest, Mr. Dunn," he scoffed. "Sexiest or whatever you call it. I am not going to let you ride a goddamn cab if my car is here and accessible for the both of us," he yelled, losing his cool once more. "Now, I don't even get anything from us. One moment, we're too emotional and apologetic and the next, we're angry. Maybe it's just the way it is. Maybe it's really the way things should be between us. We don't agree all the time. Is there a problem here?" The guard from the restaurant walked to us. Porter glared at the guard and shook his head as he held me by the waist and pulled me towards him. "Nothing. My fiancé and I are just arguing over something minor." The guard looked at me and then at Porter before nodding and walking back to his post. I removed Porter's hand immediately and scoffed at what he told to the innocent guard. "What? A fiancé?" I laughed. "Since when did I become that? Do I look like Artemis to you?" I rolled my eyes and looked away. I hate the feels so possessive of me like I am his property. I have never been, even when we dated. I still owned myself. No one else, just me. Porter his head to the side and boringly looked at me. "How many times do I have to tell you that I am not engaged with Artemis?" I chuckled and shook my head. "Well, what you say differs from what the media says. 8 years, huh?" He narrowed his eyes at me. "What? What 8 years?" he asked in confusion. "Tie the knot early next year, huh?" I mocked again, not minding what he is asking me. Now his face says how confused he is at what I am saying. It seems like he doesn't know anything that I am saying. I shook my head and scoffed his disbelief. "So you were busy dating her while you're fucking me before? Is that it?" I asked. "I don't understand a thing. Who told you? Who said I am engaged to Artemis? And what 8 years? He probed continuously while slowly losing his mind. What a liar, I muttered under my breath as I shook my head again. Gracila, he called me. I don't know what you're talking about. If this is about what the media says, don't believe whatever, I said as I saw one cab passing by. I immediately ran to the street and hailed it. Porter was still calling me but I ignored him and got into the cab. I have enough bullshit for today, I uttered as I told the taxi driver my address. The moment I saw that familiar muscular back, I already knew. He's here again. He just wouldn't stop. I just couldn't help but curse inside my head. Porter looked at me and smiled as he raised the coffee he is holding. I think he's got coffee for everyone because everyone seems to be sipping on a branded coffee cup. I rolled my eyes and ignored him. I walked past him without taking a glance at his damp muscular chest, which is not covered by his dark blue v-neck shirt. I sighed as I walked straight to the master's bedroom where my team is sitting up. Rene looked at me and smiled immediately when he saw me. You're a bit late, he uttered. I sighed and shrugged. Paul made it hard for me to leave this morning. He threw me a morning tantrums, I replied as I spread the sketch of the whole plan of the room. Rene chuckled. That's how it is when you have a school-age kid. Maybe he's just bored, he asked as he helped in installing the Venetian lamp on the wall. Maybe you should already enroll him in a school. I sighed. It was my plan in the Philippines. As a matter of fact, he is already enrolled but I had to cancel it because I want him to come with me. I don't want to leave him there. It's just so fortunate that classes here starts in September. I could enroll him in Chicago because that's where we'll be when September comes. It would be easy anyway knowing that Elliot can pull all the strings for Paul. He's a slave for my son. Why don't you just bring him here? Ina laughed. My eyes widened at her suggestion. If Porter wasn't here then maybe I would find it a laughing matter but nope. Porter is here and he's just in the living room. I don't even know why he's here again. Damn it. The father must be missing out on your child. Ina teased. I smirked and just shrugged, trying to dismiss the topic. I don't want Porter coming here and walking into that topic. I would rather evaporate than let him know that we have a child together. Thank goodness it didn't happen. When lunchtime came, Porter was there in the dining with all the food that he prepared. I narrowed my eyes as he looked at me and raised a plate. He's inviting me to come and eat with them. I rolled my eyes and looked away. I walked to the opposite of his direction and sat in between Ina and Rene just so Porter could not do something annoying again. Mr. Dunn, don't you have work? Ina asked while we were eating. Porter shook his head. No, I'm on a leave, he replied as he looked at me. I immediately looked down at my food and poked the broccoli with my fork. God, we should have agreed on a working break so I wouldn't have time to share this lunch with Porter and his annoying gazes. Wow, must be good to be on leave, Ina muttered. Yep, but that's only possible if you are the boss. Then what are you doing in NYC, Mr. Dunn? We all know you're from Chicago, Rene beamed. I remained quiet, not having any interest in their conversation. I don't want to know what he's doing here. I don't want to know why he's here. I just want him to go away. Away from me. Stop bothering me. And I already told him that, but he insists on his presence. And what was that? Respect his decision to stay? Right. Porter cleared his throat. I came here for vacation, he replied, and that made me look at him. He smiled at me. And for a woman, I raised my brow, but my heart is already warming up for a huge thumping session once more. The way he stared at me makes me want the earth to divide into two and eat me alive. Everyone cheered for him, but that was short-lived because they all remember that he's engaged to Artemis. Woman? Artemis Fuller? Ina asked. I watched his expression change from serious to furious. He turned to Ina and shook his head. I'm not engaged to Artemis Fuller, he said in a deep and low baritone. Everyone gasped in shock. I just stared at him, watching him try to explain his side in front of everyone. Well, that's his fault, right? Why would he stay here in the first place when he has no business here? But the media, Ina couldn't seem to continue what she's about to say because of the shock she's going through. The media doesn't always tell the truth, he replied, but he is looking at me intently. They are all rumors. I shook my head and looked at my food once more, unable to control my beating heart anymore because of his piercing stare. It's so amazing how the media would make everyone believe that everything they show is true, Rini said. Agreed, Ina chimed before looking at me. Are you alright? She asked. I smiled and nodded. I'm all good, I replied and then put down my utensils. I'm already full. But you barely eat. Porter's annoying sweet voice shocked everyone even more. I looked at him and saw how concerned his face was. Something that I hate so much because it sends a different kind of sensation in my stomach. I'm good, I reiterate before standing up and leaving the dining table. I walked to the garden and calmed my system. I have to step up. I can't keep on feeling all these emotions every time I see him or every time our eyes met. I should be immune to it by now and not feel anything at all, but it seems like I am still a slave of my emotions for Porter. Are you okay? I jumped in surprise when I heard Porter's voice from behind me. I inhaled a heavy breath before deciding to turn to him. I'm good, I said, smiling. Are you done eating? I asked because I know that he's not yet finished. When I left, he barely even started eating because he is busy answering questions from my members. He furrowed his brows as he placed his hands inside the pockets of his ripped jeans. I wanted to check on you. I'm good. I hate moments when we're alone. It's as if I am suffocated by his presence because, like before, he is still too much for me to handle. He pursed his lips in a thin line and looked at me intently. I'm not engaged to Artemis. I nodded. You already said that. I looked away. You don't seem to believe it. I don't have to believe it. I want you to believe it, he said in a serious voice that made me look at him curiously. His eyes are directed on me like he's so eager to get me lost in his gaze. His jaw is clenched and his lips are pursed in a thin line like he's mad at something. It doesn't matter anymore, Porter, I told him in an exhausted voice. His stare remained but the intensity increased. Why? Why doesn't it matter anymore? He asked in a low baritone. I chuckled weakly and shook my head. Why? Are you seriously asking me why? I asked back in disbelief that he's this stupid. Because I don't care anymore. I don't care about you anymore, and it doesn't matter to me whoever you marry. Don't you get that? I was already getting angry that he's still here, and the fact that he's asking me dumb questions makes me even angrier. His stare hardened. Do you know how much it hurts me whenever you reiterate right in front of my face that you don't care about me anymore? My lips parted and eyes widened. I hate it so much that you left me without a word. I was devastated. I was lost. I thought I would never find you again. I was hopeless, he sighed. I merely existed because my life left me. And it doesn't help that I know that you left me because you thought I betrayed you. I scoffed at him. You betrayed me. I yelled at him. I've heard Uncle Aris talking to you about doing a good job for making me believe that you love me. I heard him telling you to continue what you have been doing because it was your plan in the first place. So how can you tell me now that you're innocent when I saw and heard you, huh? My chest is already heaving as I looked at him with blazing eyes. My tears are already pooling around me eyes, but the anger I am feeling in my system surpasses everything in the world. Baby, I said, don't call me that. I screamed at him, so frustrated at that word. Who are you to call me that? Who are you to show up in my workplace like it's all and the same? Then, let me explain. His voice thundered. Let me explain because I am already dying, Graciela. There's not a day when you left that I don't think of you, that I don't think about all the what ifs. I regret getting into that deal with your uncle because I fell in love with you. I pursed lips in a grim line as I looked at his bloodshot eyes and his face full of desperation. I love you, Graciela. Then and even more now. His voice cracked. It's true I might have agreed to take your company away from you, but that was before I met you. That was before I fell in love with you. And believe me, baby, I tried to stop it. I am still trying to stop that son of a bitch from taking the company from you. He took a step forward. That's why I am still the CEO. That's why I never left the company even though I have my own airline company now. That's why the name never changed. He yelled out at me. Because no matter how hard I try, I could not forget you. And I could not forget what they did to you. And I hate that you have to experience all that. He looked away and I saw tears already brimming around his eyes. He wiped his eyes with his palms before looking at me again. I love you so much, Graciela. I will destroy everyone who hurt you. And I am already on my way to do that all for you. My lips parted, unable to speak. You want revenge on me? Go ahead. Like I said, I will let you ruin me if that's what makes you free from all the pain you are feeling. He walked closer to me and cupped my face with his hands. Wreck and break me any way you want, and after that, we'll break all those who broke you. You have my promise, he said with eyes blazing with anger and determination. Days passed and Porter is constantly there, watching and sometimes helping in setting up the house. He would also always see to it that everyone knows he's going to drive me home. All of those times I had refused and he couldn't do anything about it. Hey Grace, are you dating Mr. Dunn? Ina asked me one time when we're setting up the chandelier in the library. I looked at her, scandalous. What? No, I vehemently denied. Well, technically, I am not dating him in the present. I dated him in the past. That's for sure. But it will only remain in the past now since I have no intentions to get back with him no matter how persistent he is. Sure, I still love him but I couldn't bring myself to trust him again no matter how adamant he is on telling me that he will only love me and that it has always been me. Ina raised her brow at my reaction. I just thought he's always trying to impress you, she said as a matter of fact. I shook my head. Nope, we're not dating, I replied as I turned my attention back on the chandelier. I could hear Ina mumble under her breath but I ignored her. It doesn't matter what she says anyway. I am not getting back with Porter. I have thought about this a lot of times, more times than I could count. I tried to tell myself that maybe this is okay. Maybe it will work again. I tried to convince myself that maybe I will just have to work on forgiving him and hearing his side. But I have had a glimpse of his side in the garden and I am still so angry when I think of the things I went through. I still grit my teeth. And no matter how many times Porter tells me that he will help me take Uncle Aris down, I couldn't bring myself to trust him again. Not when I am scared of what's gonna happen once I give him all my trust again. I was wrecked before. I don't know if I could handle another shot of wreckage. Cake? Porter told me when we were on our break time. I looked at him and saw him holding a plate with a slice of chocolate cake. I smiled and shook my head. No, thanks. I want to be as casual and civil as I can be. Almost everyone in my team already has questioning eyes when they see me with Porter. I have to prove that nothing's going on. I walked to the other side of the table where the drinks are at. There are three different pitchers: orange juice, Four Seasons, and water. I got the pitcher of Four Seasons and poured some on my glass. I thought you love orange juice. I almost jumped and poured the juice on my shirt because Porter suddenly talked and I wasn't ready for it. I changed preferences, I replied simply as I took a sip from my juice. He didn't speak anymore and that was good enough because I don't know what else to say in order for him to stop speaking to me. He is unstoppable. We resumed with our work and finished just before 5 in the afternoon. I received a message from Ophelia telling me that Paul wanted some pasta, so I told her I would stop by the supermarket near our apartment. I went out of Miss Darlene's house after ensuring that nobody's left inside. I always made sure that I am the last to leave the house because I am the person tasked to give the keys to the security guard. I narrowed my eyes when I saw a black Aston Martin parked right in front of the gate. Standing beside it is Porter Alejandro Dunn, looking at the other end of the street. His back turned to me. I sighed and walked towards him. Why are you still here? I asked. He turned to me and smiled weakly. I'm going to drive you home. I raised my brow. How many times do I have to tell you that I don't want to ride with an Ashul? I know that already, he continued as he walked towards me. But I will not back down just because you're like that. I will not back down just because you don't want me to. I will always do what you need me to. He looked at me with a face full of hope and I could not help but laugh out loud hysterically. I can't believe he's doing all this to me now. I can't believe he's literally offering himself to be my slave. You know what I need you to be. I crossed my arms against my chest and my head to the side. I need you to leave me alone. His jaw hardened and his expression darkened. That's probably the only thing I can't do for you. He bit his lower lip. I had you slipped from me once because I left you alone. He shook his head. I'm not doing the same mistake again. I narrowed my eyes at him, but that was only to mask the pounding of my heart against my chest. So, he looked at me and smiled. Do you still have somewhere to go? I can drive you there before I take you home. I mean, to your house. I glared at him and he just shrugged. So, where to, Gracila? He asked. I can be your driver for the rest of the day. He walked towards the passenger side of the car and opened the door. He looked at me and nodded at the door. I pursed my lips in a thin line and took a deep breath. I figured that there's no use arguing with him now. It's just a waste of energy. So might as well just bear with this annoying presence. Grocery. His lips curled into a wide smile. Then to the grocery we'll go, he uttered as I was hopping inside his car. The ride to the grocery was quiet. He never asked me anything and that was what I really wanted. I don't want to talk to him. But I was shocked when I saw him walk towards the grocery with me. I gave him a look. Why are you still here? I asked. I'm going to accompany you, he replied as he pulled a cart from the entrance and started pushing it in front of him. Do you have a lot of groceries to buy? I glared at him. I can manage this, Porter. He looked at me and sighed. Yeah, but I don't want you to carry heavy bags with you, so let me help, he volunteered. I rolled my eyes and just walked inside. I looked around and remembered all the stocks that ran out and are almost running out. I got some cereals and pasta that Paul likes. I also got some toiletries like tissues, shampoos, and bath soaps. Why are you buying a lot of things? Porter asked beside me. Is your cousin coming over? I turned to him with an angry glare. He just shrugged and looked away like he never asked anything wrong. I rolled my eyes and just continued shopping. We stopped by the section of bread and spread where there are two teenagers girls looking at some chocolate fillings. They glanced at our way and immediately giggled when they saw Porter. I rolled my eyes and shook my head as I focused on getting the bread that Paul likes. It has always been a pain to go outside with him because every woman looks at him like he's some delicious meal. It never changes. So hot, one of the girls beamed quietly. Get his number, I dare you, the other one said. I could hear them both giggling until I noticed that one of them already approached Porter. I forced myself to not look at them, but that was no use because I could clearly hear the girl giggling her way in front of Porter. Hi, you're cute. Are you free tonight? The girl asked in a flirtatious and provocative voice. I raised my brows and almost scoffed at the girl's question. I have lived in the Philippines for 5 years and I am used to those kind of women, especially in the elite class. But with Porter, it is still fresh and new to me. A hand suddenly wrapped around my waist and Porter's scent immediately registered in my brain. He pulled me closer to him and even planted a kiss on my temple. I'm sorry, miss. I don't entertain other girls. I am already engaged, he said in a serious tone. My eyes widened at what he said because that was the only time that I realized what he's done. I looked at him and saw him staring at me with serious eyes. I blinked several times and that's when I realized that the girl darted away like a kid with a tantrum. Porter planted another kiss on my forehead. That's why I pinched his arm and stepped away from him. I shot him a warning look. What the hell was that? I hissed. He swallowed and shrugged. I'm sorry about that. I don't usually get that often. Not that. You. Why were you holding me like that? I asked him with clenched fist, ready to punch him if he says something unbelievable. He looked at me innocently, pouting, and I hate it so much because I could almost see Paul pouting at me whenever he couldn't get what he wants. Ah, that, he said like it was something normal of him to do. I narrowed my eyes at him, still waiting for his explanation. He rubbed the back of his neck. It's a lie if I tell you that I did that to shoo that girl away. I raised my brow. So what do you want to say? He licked his lower lip. I missed holding you, he said in a straight face. And I am thankful that a girl who wants to flirt with me came along. I had the chance to hold you and kiss you again. My heart seemed to have stopped with his words, so I turned around and just tried to ignore him as much as I could. We're almost done anyway. I have gotten the things I need to buy. I already went to the counter. Porter helped me with the groceries, so I got my wallet inside my bag and waited for the cashier to finish scanning my items. When she told me the amount, I was already about to give her my card when Porter handed her his gold freaking card. The cashier looked at me and at Porter alternately and questioningly, but Porter nodded at her, so she took the gold card over my debit. I can pay for my groceries, I told Porter while glaring at him. He looked at me bored. I know, but I can pay for it too. I narrowed my eyes at him. You don't have to. I want to, Gracila. Why is it such a big deal? He asked me in a calm manner. I clenched my fist. I don't want you paying for me. I can pay for my groceries. He sighed and looked at me apologetically. He raised his hands in surrender. I'm sorry. I won't pay for your things in the future, he said calmly and like a promise. I rolled my eyes and looked away. I turned my back at him, shut my eyes, and cursed mentally. I almost told him about Paul. What a stupid mouth. I heard him taking a deep breath as he held my hand. I'm sorry, he uttered in a voice that will melt even a heart made of metal. Ophelia was already brewing coffee when I woke up. It's a Sunday, so it means that I have no work. I promised Paul that we would walk around later because he's been bugging me to tour him around instead of just leaving him with Ophelia. I'll be jogging first, I told Ophelia as I was putting on my shoes, tying my shoelaces. Ophelia walked towards me. Mom, are you going to tour Paul the whole day? She asked. I looked up at her and smiled. Yes, it's what I promised him. We'll go to the church first before roaming around, I replied. Do you have plans today? I asked her. She smiled and nodded. I bumped into a neighbor last time. Paul and I walked around the area. He asked me if we could go out this Sunday. She seemed reluctant to tell me. I chuckled and nodded. You should meet him, Felia. Are you okay with that though? Are you comfortable with him? Ophelia smiled shyly. I don't know, Mom, but I hope, she replied as she fiddled with her fingers. To be honest, Ophelia never slacked at work. She's in her mid-30s, so I got her as Paul's nanny because she's dedicated and kind. I never heard a bad thing from Paul when it comes to Ophelia, so I think she deserves a good date on a Sunday. We'll go out before lunch, so we'll eat out. What time is your date? I asked her. She bit her lower lip. Around lunchtime, Mom. I nodded. That's great. You can go out and have fun. I'll do my mommy duties for Paul today. I stood up and fixed my razor back and training shorts. My hair is already tied up in a high ponytail and I have my iPad on my upper arm with my AirPods set. I gave Ophelia one last look before walking out the door. When Paul wakes up, just give him his favorite cereal. I'll come back real quick, I told her, and she nodded enthusiastically. I have always planned on jogging near at Central Park but I couldn't do so because my schedule is always hectic. I have to work and met the deadlines on Miss Darlin's home, so I work every Monday to Saturday. Well, the good thing is we're are only the finishing touches and we're expected to finish it by Tuesday. So, 2 more days and Paul could go to Elliot's house to sleep on his Iron Man themed room which he has been bugging me the whole time. As a matter of fact, the excited uncle, Elliot Castro, had already booked us a ticket to Chicago on Wednesday night. He said he's going to have a huge party at his home with the three of us and of course, with my best friend Sheila. I ran about a lap around the Central Park when I noticed someone following me. I stopped and began cooling down as I slowly removed my AirPod. I pursed my lips in a thin line before slowly stopping. I turned behind me and was so surprised when I saw a topless porter, Alejandro Dunn, dripping in sweat. He's got his earphones on while gripping at me like a fool. I narrowed my eyes at him. "What are you doing here?" I hissed before looking away because my eyes are distracted with his rock-hard abs and perfectly sculpted pecs. He looks like he's straight from a Playboy magazine or something. "I'm jogging," he replied. "Am I not allowed to jog here?" I took a deep breath and calmed my ass before looking at him. "Then what are you doing behind me? Are you following me?" He blinked at me before letting out a boisterous laugh. He stayed laughing for about a minute and I just rolled my eyes. When he got back to his senses, he shook his head and looked at me in the eyes. "I'm just jogging, baby. This isn't the part where I follow you like a dumb stalker." Yet, he bit his lower lip sexily. I hate it. I pursed my lips in a thin line and turned my back on him. I don't want to think about his words anymore. He's already given me too many words to ponder on every night that I couldn't even bring myself to sleep unless I tire my eyes out with those boring videos on YouTube. I shouldn't let more of his words get to me again. "Hey!" I could hear him calling me but I refused to look back or stop. I hated everything he does when I stop and turned around when he calls me. He just puts more words in my head, words that I couldn't help but think about no matter how hard I try to not think about them. I continued walking and neglected his calls until I could feel his stopping hold on my elbow. He pulled me, making me turn around and face him. "What?" I asked with furrowed brows. He looked at me, now with piercing eyes and a serious face. "I just want to tell you that I am flying back to Chicago before lunch for business matters," he said in a soft voice. He said it like he was so careful but also like he was asking for my permission to let him go. I raised my brow. "So?" I asked sarcastically. He inhaled deeply and smiled weakly. "So you want to think of other things," he replied shyly. I blinked before scoffing. "What would I think of anyway?" I asked back before rolling my eyes. "Well, you keep saying that I am engaged to your cousin. I don't want you thinking that I am flying back there to be with her," he said before biting his lower lip. My heart stopped beating for a moment because I can hear sincerity in his voice. I can hear that he's so concerned of what my opinion about him will be. He looked at me with a familiar gleam in his eyes. "Don't think too much, okay?" he told me in a voice like that of a lullaby, trying to hypnotize me to follow him. I pursed my lips in a thin line. "I'm not thinking of anything, Porter." He sighed and nodded. "Then that's good. I don't want you thinking about anything that would make you lose your trust in me even more. I have yet to gain it again." He ran his palms from my elbow to my hand. I looked at our hands that his intertwined. My heart hurt at the sight of it. I could remember everything that did 5 years ago. All the late night talks, all the dinners that we shared, the nights when I am curled up in his arms as he kissed me good night. I pulled my hand away from him to stop the raining of thoughts inside my head. Pain crossed his face the moment we lost physical contact. He smiled weakly, but his smile didn't reach his eyes, and I feel like my heart is being hit by 1,000 daggers. "When are you coming back to Chicago?" he asked softly. "I don't know," I replied. "Will you still be coming back to Chicago?" he asked. I looked at him with a glare. "Yes, of course. I have to orchestrate my plans," I said in gritted teeth. He smiled and nodded. "Of course, I'll help you take your revenge." I swallowed. "I don't need your help, but I offer it to you anyway." I looked at him and saw his eyes gazing back at me with an intense stare. It's like I am being trapped inside his gaze, and it will be very difficult to get out of it. "You should go," I said, just to end this funny conversation. He nodded. "I probably should," he replied. "I'll text you." I narrowed my eyes at him. "I didn't give you my number," I hissed. "But Miss Tan did so now. I have your digits. I'll send you a text once I landed," he said calmly. "I will miss you." He was almost breathless as he uttered those words. His eyes pierced through me. "Please, you're allowed to miss me too." My lips parted as I saw him running back away from me. I could clearly see other women in the ogling at him before sending me judgmental looks. I took a deep breath before shaking my head and running to the other way. "Mommy, let's eat." Paul beamed the moment we stepped outside the church. He's been enjoying the whole mass now, which is a good sign. I looked at him and smiled. "Okay, what do you want to eat?" I asked him. "Pasta," he replied lively while as he pulled my hand and walked towards the Italian restaurant that we saw on our way to the church a while ago. I chuckled and let my son take the lead. He's so energetic because he's been waiting for this day the whole week. Truth be told, I am kind of feeling bad because I couldn't even read his bedtime stories because I was almost always home late. So now is the day that I decided for him alone. Paul ordered a lot of pasta and I let him. I know that we couldn't finish everything, so I'm thinking of taking them home so Ophelia could eat some. I think she's also become fond of pasta now because of Paul. I wiped the white sauce around Paul's lips as I felt my phone vibrating. I put down the tissue and fished my phone inside my bag only to read a message from an unknown number. From unknown. "I'm here now, just landed safely." I pursed my lips in a thin line and begged myself to not roll my eyes the moment I read the message. I already know who it is from and I am already thinking of blocking him. "Mommy, are you not going to eat?" Paul's cute voice broke my thoughts. I looked at him and immediately placed my phone back inside my bag. I need to focus on my son now and not mind unimportant matters or persons. I smiled at my son, who is gripping tightly on his fork while the pasta is hanging in midair. I chuckled and shook my head as I began to eat in front of him. Paul smiled widely while he ate happily. "Don't eat too fast, Paul," I told him and handed him his water. He sipped on the water before nodding. "This is so good, Mom," he beamed as he cutely munched on the food in front of him. I smiled at him and watched him eat merrily before my phone vibrated again. From unknown. "I hope you've eaten your lunch." I rolled my eyes and exhaled hard. I turned my phone off before putting it back inside my bag. "Who's that, Mom?" Paul asked me, pertaining to the person who texted. My heart pounded hard inside my chest as I imagined different scenarios inside my head. For the past 4 years, Paul never really asked for a father. I don't know why, but he seemed to be happy with just me and him. But then again, I know that sooner or later, he'll be very curious of who his father is, and when the time comes, I would have had prepared him a good answer with an even better explanation. "Mom," he called me when I didn't answer. I looked at him and smiled to alleviate the anxiety inside me. "Nothing. It was just Aunt Sheila." I lied. He nodded. "I miss Aunt Sheila. When will I meet her again?" he asked while his eyes are all on the pasta in front of him. "You'll see her when we go to Uncle Elliot's house." "When is that, Mommy?" he asked innocently before opening his mouth wide for another forkful of pasta. I smiled at his cuteness. "On Wednesday, we will fly to Chicago." "With Ophelia?" he asked. I nodded. "So, will she leave her boyfriend?" he asked. I narrowed my eyes at him. "Boyfriend? Where did you learn that word?" He shrugged. "On TV," he replied nonchalantly because all his attention is on the pasta in front of him. I sighed. Television is really a double-edged sword. "I don't know," I told him. "But then, they can communicate through phones." Paul looked at me. "Do you and Daddy communicated through phones?" he asked. I looked at his eyes that resembled so much of his father's. "What?" "Grandma said that my daddy is somewhere far when I asked her, 'Do you communicate through phones as well?'" He repeated his innocent question. I stared at him, stunned at the question, not knowing what to answer. "See? That's what happens when you don't tell your son the truth about his father," Sheila told me while we were on FaceTime on Sunday night. "Paul is already sleeping in his room and I am here calling my best friend because I have just faced one of the hardest questions in my life from my son." It was as if I was caught red-handed because I have never expected him to ask me that as early as now. I wasn't prepared to answer that yet, and I don't know when I will be really ready to answer that. "What did you tell him then?" Sheila asked. I sighed. I didn't answer it. I opened another more interesting topic and Paul definitely caught the bait. Sheila let out a boisterous laugh from the other line. She's shaking her head as she held onto her stomach that's probably hurting because of too much laughing. I pursed my lips in a thin line and rolled my eyes. "What do you expect me to do then?" I asked her, already raising my voice. She shook her head and gave me a meaningful look. "You know what, Grace? You can never move on from the moment until you tell the daddy that he's already a daddy." And she said it like it is easy to tell Porter about Paul, or vice versa. It will only hurt all three of you when you continue hiding Paul from his father, she said. I know I told you that Porter doesn't deserve to know Paul, but I believe that Paul deserves to know his father. I narrowed my eyes at her. You're confusing, she shrugged. Not as confusing at you, babe. I rolled my eyes. I don't know, I think I'm going to think about it first. Haven't you already thought about it? It's been 5 years, she beamed. Paul is about to turn 5 years old. Aren't you a bit alarmed that he doesn't know his dad yet? I shut my eyes. This is what I love and hate about Sheila. She tells me the real deal every time, whether I need it or not. She tells me her opinion together with a more rational opinion. I'll just cross the bridge when I get there, I told her, sighing. She shrugged. That's going to be hard, but always remember that I will always be here for you, she said. And I miss you already. Can you come here sooner? I chuckled, slightly feeling lighter. On Thursday, you can visit Paul. That's good news. I can't wait, she beamed. Our talk and catch up lasted for 2 more hours because she was talking about our classmates in college and where they ended up with now. She even told me that Jasper is already married to one of our professors in economics. That seemed to be a start of a more vigorous storytelling session. I went to bed at around 10 o'clock when my phone vibrated on my bedside table. From Dan. How was your day? I pursed my lips in a thin line and locked my screen before putting my phone back on the bedside table. I don't want to reply to any of his text messages because it makes me think of the moments we texted until midnight. I shut my eyes and shook my head, hoping it would shake away all the thoughts I have about Porter and our past. But then he seemed to know when to annoy me that much because my phone vibrated once again. I took a deep breath as I slowly took my phone and read the message. From Dan. Are you asleep? I swallowed hard and narrowed my eyes on the screen. I know Porter so much and I know that he wouldn't stop sending me texts until he annoys me enough to reply a hate text to him. I blocked him straight away and placed the phone back on the bedside table. Right now, there's no more Porter. I could sleep in peace. I have made all the necessary adjustment measures. Elliot told me when he visited me and Paul in my apartment on Tuesday night. He's here to accompany me and Paul to fly back in Chicago on tomorrow night. Apparently, we have finished our project with Miss Darlene on time, which made her really happy. She said she'd recommend my team to her colleagues in the future. She even invited us on a night out but I refused because I told him that Elliot is coming by. Also, Porter didn't send me any text after. Well, it's not like he could send me one though. I have blocked him on my phone which made my day more peaceful. He never visited the site again but that was understandable because he said that he has some business matters to handle. It's not like his presence is needed though. No, I am more comfortable without him around but Ina seemed to feel the other way around because she kept on asking me Porter's whereabouts. I kept shoving her off but she was insistent. Now, I'm just happy that it already ended and I will be leaving New York in less than 24 hours. Elliot raised his brow at me when he noticed that I didn't respond. Is everything fine? I asked. I turned to him and swallowed. Is Artemis engaged to Porter? I questioned because it has been bothering me. I know the media has been talking about their said engagement, but Porter has denied it. He said he's never been engaged to her. So now, I'm confused. Who is telling the truth? I have thought about this every night, and I can't seem to neglect the chances of Porter lying to me. He's done that before and I know he could do it again. Maybe he's just telling me he's not engaged because he has other plans. Does he want me to just believe that so he could get revenge on me for leaving him? Or so that I would believe and forget about my plans on taking my own revenge? This is so pathetic. I have never lived like this before. Elliot gave me a knowing look. It is not a secret to him that Porter and I dated before. Damn, he even knows that Porter is the father of my son. But then, I have never heard him say anything bad about him. I have heard him cursing my uncle and his accolades but never to Porter. Sure, Porter said that Elliot lied to him before but I have never heard Elliot talk ill about Porter. Or did I only miss it? What? I asked. He sighed and shrugged. I don't know, really. I never heard him talk about it but then the media kept on putting them together. I narrowed my eyes at him upon remembering what he told when he sent me the link about Porter and Artemis' engagement. He told me to work faster if I still want to get my parents' company back. But now, he's telling me that he's not sure? What the hell? Why are you asking anyway? Are you meeting with him again? He asked with narrowed eyes. I looked away. Okay, now, I probably look guilty because I couldn't look at him straight. My, he said in a playful voice. He chuckled. Are you seeing him again, Graciela Pauline? He asked with a malicious voice. I sighed and looked at him boringly. I am not. He smirked at me. I know that smirk from my cousin. He knows it whenever I am lying and now I know that he will see through me now. Really? He asked, but I feel like he's more of mocking me right now. I glared at him. He's looking at me sheepishly. The face of him that I hate the most. Fine. He was in Miss Darlene's office for a few days. A few? Elliot chimed. I rolled my eyes. Yes. Yes? I hate you, I told him and he just laughed at me. I stood up and walked towards the kitchen where I got a glass of water. You're lying. You're drinking water to wash away all your lies. He beamed from the living room and I just glared at him even though I couldn't even see him. Uncle, why are you shouting? Paul asked and that made Elliot busy again. He helped Paul in packing and I was more than thankful for my son. My phone beeped from my pocket and I narrowed my eyes at him. From unknown. Did you block me? I couldn't call your number. What the hell? I rolled my eyes and typed in angrily. To unknown. I already blocked you. I was already sending you a message that I don't want to talk to you. I was hoping you're wise enough to understand it. I angrily locked my phone and slid it back in my back pocket. I was panting hard in anger as I drank another glass of water. Porter really breaks his record on getting the best of me every time, and I am so amazed by that talent of his. I was a fool to think that he'd stop texting me because not a minute has passed and I could already hear my phone beeping to another text from unknown. Sorry if I'm annoying, but at least you replied, have a great day. I don't really feel his apology because I feel like he's intentionally annoying me with his text. I rolled my eyes and controlled myself from an emotional outburst due to his incessant texting. I placed my phone on silent mode and walked to my room to start packing for my things too. Elliot already told me that he's got it all for us in his house. He even got a room for Ophelia, who I interrogated about her boyfriend, according to Paul, but she said that they are just friends. I took my luggage and started putting my clothes in there. It was a relief that I didn't get to unpack everything because I only have a few to fold and fit in that huge luggage. It was not half an hour until I was done, so I went to my son's room to see how his packing with Uncle Elliot moment is going. Mommy, Paul beamed as he showed me the mess inside his room. Elliot is sitting on the floor, busy with folding while my son just puts whatever he wants inside his cute Iron Man luggage. He seemed so excited and I can't help but laugh at him. I helped the two and it took us at least 2 hours to finish because Paul tends to take them all out once again and tell stories about his experiences while wearing those clothes. Elliot was listening intently while I silently folded his clothes. Elliot and I were talking in the living room when Paul and Ophelia were already asleep. We're both drinking red wine as we watch some sappy drama shows on Netflix. I looked at him and saw his eyes fixed on the screen. He seemed so engrossed on the show while taking a sip on his wine. Have you finally moved on? I asked him. I know I don't really ask what went down between him and Princess, but I know how much he was hurt when they broke up. He even spent 1 full month in the Philippines because he wanted to have a change in environment. Years after, I have never heard him being on a date with someone. He never talked about the status of his love life. He was just so busy with work and with Paul. He smiled and nodded. Princess, she will always be that woman for me, he started. I don't really think I will ever move on from her. My heart hurt at the sight of Elliot in pain. He never shows me this side of him. He never shows his vulnerable side to anyone I know. But I know that he's still in a difficult situation. He's still hurting. But you see, she's already married and I have to accept that she's choosing someone else over me. He smiled weakly. But the love, it will always be there. She will always be here. He pointed at his left chest. In life, there are people who you can't just forget because they have given you so many moments to ponder on, like you and Porter. He paused and looked at me. You left him even though he loved you so much, and I know that you love him the same. I gulped and waited for his next words because I might hate to admit it. He's definitely hitting the head of the nail on this one. You can't ever forget him, Grace. I'm not saying that you can't forget him because you have a son, but because he's your first. He's the first person who made you feel loved, the first person who made you feel how painful heartbreaks are, the first person who made you happy beyond the moon. Elliot smiled weakly while staring at his wine glass. There are just people in our lives who hold an irreplaceable place in our hearts. And even though we're not really for each other, even when there comes a time that we love someone else, that place will always be for them, no one else. I looked away and wiped the tears that rolled down my cheeks. I let his words down on me and I couldn't help but just agree. Suddenly, I could feel Elliot's warm hug and I buried my face on his chest. He still loves you, Grace. I hope you don't make the same decisions that I made, he whispered so softly as he listened to my sobs. Paul's eyes were so wide when we were inside Elliot's house. Well, he hasn't been in a real mansion in his whole life. Aunt Leilani's mansion in the Philippines is only a villa compared to Elliot's. His house has two indoor pools, one huge outdoor pool, a jacuzzi, a game floor, a socialization floor, and an entertainment room that could match that of a cinemas. I have been here, but I still feel in awe whenever I think that Elliot is living here. He's more like a prince now. Let's go check your room, Elliot asked Paul, to which my son just nodded excitedly. I sighed and gave my things to the helpers. They all assisted me and led me to my room when my eyes caught a glance of a familiar woman. I stopped on my tracks and checked to see if I am seeing it all right. My eyes widened when I finally realized that what I am seeing is real. Linda! I called her and she smiled widely. She's aged now but her posture is the same. She still looks so strict and controlling on her cold facade, but warm and welcoming whenever she smiles. I ran to her and hugged her tight. She chuckled lowly and returned my hug with a tighter one. I miss you, Nana, I told her. The last time I was in this house, I was not here. I asked Elliot of her whereabouts and he said she went home to her family in Michigan. I didn't know that he was still in contact with her. You've grown into a fine young woman, Grace, she said as she smiled at me. I can see her fine lines on her forehead and on the sides of her eyes. I applied everything that you taught me, Nana, I told her, and she smiled widely. How are you? I asked her as I caressed her face. I thought you went home with your family. She shook her head. I did, but Elliot called me last week to say that you are coming with your son. I couldn't pass on that chance to take care of your son the way I took care of you and your mother. I looked at her tenderly before chuckling. I raised him the same way you did to me, Nana, I told her. She laughed at me before shaking her head. Then I must see to it that he learned from the best, she said as she walked with me towards my room. I am so happy to be back in Chicago and I never thought I will be this glad. Every moment I imagine myself stepping foot here. I am always enraged and full of desire to take my revenge on everyone who did me wrong. But now that I am here with my son, I feel like I am finally home. I slept so late because I couldn't calm myself down to rest. I unpacked my clothes and even Paul's and finished them in a night. I slept at 4 in the morning and woke up 6 hours later to help prepare food for Sheila who's coming over for lunch. You even know how to cook now? Linda asked in amusement as she watched me cook Paul's favorite carbonara. I smiled and nodded. I learned a lot in the Philippines, Nana, I told her, proud of what I have become. Linda smiled and nodded approvingly before proceeding to inspect the other dishes being cooked by the other helpers. It was all serious and quiet until I heard Sheila's loud, "Paul, Aunt Sheila is here!" from the main door. I could hear Paul shrieking as he ran towards Sheila, who was also shrieking like a child. "Aunt Sheila!" Paul beamed. I wiped my hands on the apron and removed it to welcome Sheila, who I heard was already asking about me. Ophelia even came to the kitchen to call me. "Grace!" Sheila loudly called me from the living room. I rolled my eyes and appeared in front of her in a white shirt and jean shorts, my usual outfit inside the house. She smiled at me sheepishly as she walked to me and enveloped me in a tight hug. "I miss you," she giggled. "Come on after lunch. We'll go out and shop." I narrowed my eyes at her, confused at what she's saying. "What?" She grinned wider. "I told Elliot that I am taking you to shopping because we couldn't do a lot of shopping in New York before. Paul will be left here with his trusted nanny and Uncle Elliot while his mommy will come with me and be a single woman for a moment." I frowned at her. "I am single." "Not by a long shot," she contradicted as she hooked her arms with mine and led me to sit on the couch in the living room. She leaned closer to my ear. "I heard Artemis is throwing a huge tantrum because Porter left without her knowledge when he went to NYC. I gave her a bored look. "So what?" She raised her brow and looked at me meaningfully. "Don't so what me. I know that he's getting back with you." "You told me through FaceTime," she hissed. I rolled my eyes. "I don't get your point. I told you about that, but I also told you about my plan of not wanting to have anything to do with him. Which," she trailed, "is not a good idea because I know that you still love him." I looked at him with a raised brow. "What's wrong with you? You were the one who told me not to get back with him." She laughed hysterically for a moment before halting on the dot. "Nothing," she shrugged. "I just thought that maybe he's really serious with you," she uttered. "And besides, I hate your evil cousin so much. I wish Porter Dunn breaks her heart big time." I chuckled and shook my head. "You're just saying that because I'm your best friend." She laughed. "Well, of course, that's the first reason." She frowned. "The other one is that she bullied me when we were still in high school." I scoffed and shook my head in disbelief. "That's so old news now, Sheila. Are you still at it?" I asked. "I know my best friend. She forgives easily but doesn't forget. I swear she even knows who called her fat when we were still elementary. She has a photographic memory on things like that." "Whatever." She rolled her eyes and smiled at Paul, who is watching us while holding the pair of shoes Sheila got for him. "Paul, come here and let Aunt Sheila put those cute shoes on for you." She beamed and everything was normal again. Sheila was not kidding when she said that she already told Elliot about taking me out on a shopping spree this afternoon because right now we're already walking inside one of the largest malls in downtown Chicago, shopping for luxury dresses and handbags. Sheila is a known painter and she's had several art exhibits under her plate now. She's one of the most renowned artists today together with Lake Finch, Yara Bogat, and Sian Orville. 1 out of 10 people in the mall knows her and ask for her autograph, which is actually a good fit considering that not many people admire painters. "You're pretty popular," I told her. She just rolled her eyes and pulled me into another designer clothing shop. We shopped for more than 4 hours. Sheila bought so many handbags. 7 to be exact. She said she's going to use a different handbag every day so her colleagues wouldn't think she's getting poorer. I just laughed at her reasoning because who would actually believe that she's going bankrupt? It was already dinner time when we left the mall and decided to eat at a fine dining restaurant around the block. We ordered their full course meal and chatted about her life as an artist while waiting for our food. Everything was going happy and well until the door's chimes rang and a number of people came inside. I narrowed my eyes when I saw a familiar face from the men that came in, and my eyes widened when I realized that it is indeed Sage Black. Beside him is a woman who looks like a model with her long hair, tall height, and tiny body build. I froze on my spot when Sage Black suddenly glanced my way and smirked before walking to a table in the far end of the hall. "Are you okay?" Sheila asked me, oblivious because her back is turned at the entrance and only me could see Porter's eyes piercing through me as he walked inside with Artemis beside him. Sheila looked at the direction I was staring at and said, "Oh." I tore my eyes away from Porter and Artemis and just focused on the very normal flower arrangement on top of the table like it's a very fascinating one. I could hear Sheila chuckling weakly in her seat and I couldn't do anything but glare at her. I know that she didn't know anything about this, but I need to find someone to blame now, so I could at least calm down. "I hate you," I told her. She looked at me and shrugged. "Why me? Artemis is there. She's the person you should hate," she said in a playful tone which only gained her another death glare from me. I could hear laughter coming from their table and it annoyed me so much. "I am not engaged to Artemis, my ass. What a player. It's a good thing that I never actually trusted him again because I know that he's only fooling me. It will not even surprise me if I knew that he came back here because his Artemis is already requesting his presence. Or maybe he missed the warmth that Artemis could give him every night. That's why he decided to come back." Ashul. I exhaled deeply and tried to calm myself. I begged myself to stop thinking of the lewd images of Porter and Artemis in a bed. But damn it, I couldn't stop. Thankfully, our orders came and I have never once glanced their way, which is an incredible feat from me. I focus on eating and on whatever Sheila is saying even though I couldn't really understand anything. "I just want to leave this place." When we were on our main course, my phone vibrated. I grabbed it immediately and read it just in case it is my son or my cousin Elliot. From Dan. "Are you back for good?" I narrowed my eyes at the screen and Sheila seemed to have noticed. "What's it?" she asked. I shook my head and locked my phone without bothering to reply. "Nothing." Sheila raised her brow at me and then quickly glanced at Porter's table before smiling at me meaningfully. "Is it him?" she asked, teasing. I rolled my eyes and just continued eating. I don't want to talk about Porter now because I am still feeling betrayed that he's with Artemis now, even though I don't understand why I'm feeling this way. He can be with her and I should be okay with that because he is not mine to begin with. Sheila chuckled and shook her head before continued eating. "Eat fast. I don't want to stay here for long," I told her. She looked at me and intentionally slowed her movements down just so she could annoy me even more. I sneered at her and she just smiled at me, unapologetic. When I finished the dessert, I told her that I will go to the powder room for a while, but that seemed to be my worst decision of the day because when I got out, I saw Porter already waiting for me outside. He's leaning on the wall like that when I first saw him when I got back. I have a heavy sigh and stopped in front of him. He stood up straight and looked at me the moment he saw me standing in front of him. "What are you doing here?" I asked sternly. He stared at me with eyes looking so apologetic. She's not supposed to be with us. She just came because heaven called her, he explained. I stared back at him, boringly. I don't really care whether you eat with her or eat her. It's your life, I said as I started walking away. I fucking hate myself right in this moment because of what I just told him. I bit my lip and cursed myself to death until I felt Porter's hold on my elbow, stopping me from walking away from him. I rudely looked at him. "What?" I asked, annoyed. He pursed his lips in a thin line and sighed hard, like he's trying to control himself from an upcoming outburst. "I don't sleep with her, Graciela," he said with a controlled voice. "I have never slept with her." I narrowed my eyes at him before rolling my eyes. "You can sleep with anyone. I don't care." He clenched his jaw and his stare hardened even more. "Then why did you look so annoyed when you saw me with her a while back?" he asked in a rude way. His grip on my elbow tightened. "I love seeing you get jealous, baby. But I hate to make you feel insecure of my love for you." I swallowed hard as I could already feel my heart picking up its pace with the way he called me baby once more. Damn, I hate when he calls me that because it makes me feel different. He pulled me close to him until my body collided with his. His hand immediately found the small of my back while his other hand carries my cheek. "Now, answer my question. Are you back for good?" he asked with his eyes twinkling. I stared at him, unable to control the beating of my heart because of our close proximity. His hot, menthy breath fanned my face and his lips are too close to mine. His lips parted as his eyes went down to my mouth. I could see him swallowing because his Adam's apple moved up and down. He slowly tilted his head and my eyes immediately closed. I was waiting and anticipating and being a traitor to myself when I heard a man's voice. "Porter, Artemis is looking for you. What's taking you so long in—" Oh, with all my might, I immediately pushed Porter away from me and walked as fast as I could back on the table. I could hear Porter's faint voice cursing at Chad, who came at a very wrong time. Damn it. Sheila's eyes widened when she saw me walking her way. I ignored it because I know that she's just looking at me like that because she already knew what happened in the comfort room. But then I was wrong. "Gracila!" I froze on my spot when I heard Porter's voice from behind me. My eyes widened and my system seemed to have malfunctioned like it always does. Sheila looked at me with her eyes widening at me, pertaining to the man behind me. I didn't dare to look back at him and just decided to get my bag and walk out of that darn restaurant. What was I doing there anyway? I rushed out before getting my phone inside my bag to shoot a text to Elliot. I don't even know why I am texting him, but then it made me feel slightly relieved that I did. I looked around for a cab, but then I could already hear Porter's voice behind me. I shut my eyes and took a deep breath before trying my best to calmly turn to him. His eyes are worried as he looked at me. I can also see his clenched jaw as he stepped closer to me. He inhaled a sharp breath as he tried to take my hand, but I slid them behind me. "What do you want, Porter?" I asked him in a shaking voice. He looked at me, seemingly exhausted and fed up at everything that's happening around us now. "I know that you know what I want, Gracila," he said in his usual low baritone. "I want you back. I want us back." I narrowed my eyes at him. "It won't happen," I replied in all certainty. He looked at me with a familiar look in his eyes, something that I know but I refuse to admit it to myself. His gaze softened even more. "What is it now, baby? Is it about Artemis?" he asked in a tender voice. "No," I shook my head. "No." I looked away but I could already feel him holding my hand and I am too soft and weak to take it back from him. I could hear him sighing deeply until I felt his mouth on the back of my hand. "Can we not fight tonight, Graciela? I am still not over the fact that you're back in Chicago again," he asked as he cupped my face and made me look at him. His eyes are somehow talking to me like they're begging me to stop fighting him now because it will not do any good for the both of us. "Are you back for good?" he asked in a very soft voice. "No," I replied. "I am not back for good. I have thought about this several times now and although Chicago is my home, I can't stay here for long. My son, I would have to take him away after everything is done. I want him to live a quiet and stress-free life away from all the drama here. But then, I have also thought that once I am done with taking Uncle Aris down, everything will fall into place. My only problem left would be Porter, because I know how persistent he is." Porter pursed his lips in a thin line. "Okay," he said calmly. "Are you just taking your revenge then? And after that, you'll leave again?" I narrowed my eyes at him to mask the pain that is constricting my whole chest right now. Looking at him is like looking through the eyes of my son. I've already realized that before, but right now seems to be the most painful of those times. "You live with your son?" he pondered with almost breathless. Anxiety and fear rushed through me as I heard that from him. My eyes widened. How did he know about my son? I immediately stepped back and yanked his hold on me. I am close to shivering because I have never expected him to know about Paul. Paul is my secret from him, my ultimate secret, something that he should never know. His eyes narrowed at me as his jaw tensed. "Miss Tan told me that you have a son. She said the father left the both of you," he uttered in gritted teeth. "Who's the father, Graciela? I will search for him and make him pay." My lips parted. I don't even know if I will be relieved or if I will be scared of his threat. But all I know is that I want to evaporate right now. I want to turn into vapor and disappear in front of him while I silently blame myself for taking the job of Miss Darlins. "I don't want to talk about it," I said as I looked away. I could hear him breathing hard. His anger is building but then again, it's all pointless because the truth is, he is only blindly mad at himself. "But who is he?" he asked in a voice already starting to rise. I shut my eyes before grabbing all the courage I could get to look at him. "You said you don't want to fight now, right?" I asked him. "If you don't want to fight, stop asking me that question." He looked at me with furrowed brows. He didn't speak but I can see him clenching his jaw and fist. He let out several deep breaths and was about to speak when we heard a female voice call him from the entrance of the restaurant. "God, are we always going to argue in front of a damn restaurant every time? Is destiny fucking with me?" "Porter," Artemis' soft voice called him, making me look at where the voice came from. Porter didn't move though. His eyes are only on me, watching my every move. Artemis walked beside Porter and hooked her arm with his before looking at me with a raised brow. "So you're really back," she stated. I smirked. "Unless I'm a ghost now, then yes, I am back." Her face contorted in annoyance and I can't help but be proud of myself. "Well," she said as she looked at me from head to toe, "I can't believe you would still be wearing those kinds of clothes even though you're already broke," she taunted. "Do you have a sugar daddy who supplies you all the luxury brands?" "Artemis," Porter scolded her as he tried to yank his arm away from her. But being snake like she is, she doesn't let go of him, and she makes sure that I see it. I shook my head and smiled wickedly. "What about you? An embodiment of a trashy character wrapped in luxury?" I said and made sure she hears every emphasis in my sentence. "What do they call you? Gold-plated?" She snarled at me and was already ready to grab me by the hair when Porter pushed her strong enough to keep her away from me. She looked at Porter in pure disbelief as Porter placed me behind him. "You have no right to attack her." His voice thundered and even the guard of the restaurant looked our way. Artemis looked at Porter with wide eyes and parted lips. "Porter," she was beginning to whine, "that girl is here to take a revenge on all of us." I narrowed my eyes at her and she talked to Porter as desperate as she could be. "She's going to take our company away." "Okay." That was my cue to lunge at her and slap her hard. "I don't really care if we're already in a public place right now. It's only been a few minutes but my anger towards her is already overflowing. Their company? The audacity." I grabbed her hair and pulled her to the ground. "Your company?" I yelled at her. "You have the audacity to tell me that Grayson Air is your company? You're really so full of Gracila." I could hear Porter trying to stop me but I could care less. What I want to do now is for Artemis' face to kiss the ground, and that's still not enough to pay for everything her family did to me. Nothing could ever be enough payment for the lives of my parents. You're still so thick-skinned, Artemis. Your father was the mastermind in killing my parents because of his envy on Grayson, and now you're telling me that it is your company? I was raging. It's as if I'm a bull who can only see red. Artemis was already crying in pain as she tried to remove my hands on her hair but I pulled back even stronger. "Stop!" she screamed but I didn't stop. I could feel Porter's hand on my arm, trying to stop me from killing my cousin because I swear to God, I can kill her right now. "Baby, stop it," Porter told me and tried to calm me down but I was unstoppable. I waited for this moment to happen and now that she's given me enough reason for me to get violent of her, I couldn't bring myself to stop. "You're so like your father," I bellowed as I pinned her face on the ground. "You're even trashier than the dirtiest trash." I wasn't contented with pinning her face on the cold floor, so I hovered on top of her and pulled her hair simultaneously with slapping her thick face. "Shut!" I heard someone mutter before I felt another person stopping me from killing this evil witch. Porter pulled me up as Artemis while getting attended by Chad. I was still glaring at her as I watched what damage I have caused her. When I saw the scratches on her face, I couldn't be any prouder of myself. Chad looked at me in disbelief before Porter made me face him. His face looked so worried as he immediately inspected my face and my arms. "You're going to be the death of me," he exclaimed before pulling me close to him and enclosed me into a tight hug. I could hear Artemis cry, but I could care less on her because my own tears were already falling down too. My heart is about to burst in anger, and these tears are their only way out aside from the violence that I just showed everyone. Porter kissed my temple as he hugged me tight. "This, Gracilla. If this is the kind of revenge you want, I would die," he whispered as he continued hugging me. "Dude, she needs to be rushed to the ER," Chad said. I broke the hug and glanced at Artemis, who's still on the floor, covered in abrasions and wounds. I clenched my fist. That isn't even one-fourth of the things I want to do with her. "Chad, go and rush her to the hospital," Sage Black suddenly spoke, and there I saw that everyone in the restaurant is looking at us, including Sheila, who seemed to be recording the whole incident. I narrowed my eyes at her as she gave me a proud smile and a thumb up. I know that she would be proud of me because I am aware of how much she hates Artemis so much. And I know that if this was her, she would do even worse because she's into Muay Thai these days. I looked back at Artemis and saw that she's being carried by Chad towards a car. Sage Black and the woman he is with walked towards us. "Are you okay?" the woman asked me. She looked so kind and passionate, totally different from Sage's intensely cold facade. I nodded quickly before feeling Porter's fingers interlocking with mine. The woman frowned at Porter. "Possessive, I'm not getting here away from you." She rolled her eyes before smiling at me. "I'm Heaven," she introduced. I smiled weakly and nodded. "I'm Gracilla Fowler, I know," she smiled. "Porter's ex." I finished it for her. I could hear Porter uttering a curse under his breath while both Sage and Heaven laughed. "Right, ex," Sage said as his eyes drifted on our lace fingers. I bit my lip and immediately removed my hand from his. I heard Porter angrily cursing at his cousin while his cousin just shook his head. I smiled at Heaven. "I have to go," I told her. "Nice meeting you." Heaven smiled. "Nice meeting you too. I also heard you're an interior designer. I hope you're an interior designer." "I'm an architect. Wish we could somehow work together around her," she said, hopeful. I want to tell her that it would be very impossible situation, but I am also so spent now because of what I did to Artemis, so I just told her sure. Porter looked at me. "Who are you riding with?" he asked. "Me," Sheila said as she raised her brow at Porter. "Got a problem with that?" she asked in a warning tone. Porter pursed his lips in a thin line before sighing hard. I smiled and hooked arms with my best friend. "Let's go," I said as I started pulling her towards her car even though she's still busy giving death glares at Porter. I pursed my lips in a thin line as I looked at Porter for one last time before getting into the shotgun. He's watching me intensely as he kept sighing hard. "Get in," Sheila yelled, and that put me back onto my senses. I tore my eyes away from Porter and slipped into the shotgun seat of my best friend's car. What an epic day! Elliot was so furious when we got home because Sheila told everything to him. He glared at me as he looked at me from head to foot to see if I have any traces of bruises. I know that he's worried about me, but his face is so angry at me. "You shouldn't have done that," he scolded. "What if you got hurt?" I frowned at him. Well, she's not hurt because she went on full best mode on her witch of a cousin. Good job, Sheila said as she smiled at me widely. Elliot glared at her before looking back at me. What will you get from that, Gracila? You just got it worse. I sighed and just listened to a whole lot of litany from Elliot, but then again, all I could think of is that Porter knows that I have a son and it's only a matter of time when he unravels the truth. Fear already dripped in my system as I imagined the moment that he knows the truth about Paul. I shook my head and just looked at Elliot's who finally finished scolding me and now is just staring at me with angry eyes. Are you listening to me? His voice thundered. I took a deep breath and nodded. I looked at Sheila, hoping for a little help, but she just shrugged at me. Damn it, Gracila! Elliot started again. He began his litany once more, and I can only just sit here and suffer the same experience that I suffered just minutes again. I shut my eyes and leaned my head on the backrest of the couch when we heard one of the helpers calling Elliot. That made him stop, and I've never been so happy for an interruption. Elliot rudely glanced at the helper. What? He asked in a rude tone. The helper seemed to be taken aback and shocked at Elliot's sudden snap. Sir, someone is at the door. He said he wants to talk to Miss Gracila, she said in a shaky voice. My eyes widened as Elliot's eyes went to me, narrowed and questioning. But then, I don't have anything to say to him now because anxiety is already creeping out in my system. I immediately looked at the stairs and prayed to God that Paul will not wake up anytime soon. What's his name? Sheila asked because none of us, Elliot and I, had the capacity to even ask. I was too busy worrying while Elliot was too busy questioning me with his stare. The helper looked at Sheila. Porter Dunn is what he said his name is, she replied, and then I was gone. I was already to the door and there I saw Porter standing behind the gate while facing my direction. His hands are on the railings while he was busy kicking something on the ground. I uttered and then walked closer to him. When he saw me walking towards him, he stood up and placed his hands inside his pockets. His eyes remained on me and even with the railings in between us, I can still feel the intensity of his stare. I can never deny how affected I am with his gaze. How did you know? I couldn't finish my sentence because the gate opened. I looked behind me and saw Elliot opening the gate for Porter through the controller. I took a deep breath and before facing Porter again. He's already right in front of me, only inches from me. I know Elliot's address and I am not stupid enough to not know that you'll be staying here, Porter said with a stoic face. Okay. His statement just confirmed my stupidity and I am starting to hate myself more than I hate Porter right now. Porter, Elliot spoke as he walked closer to us. What brings you here? Porter faced my cousin and stared at him intensely. He's slightly taller than Elliot, so he seemed to be the stronger one of the two, but then Elliot was looking at him as proudly as he could. I just want to check on Gracila, Porter replied. Elliot glanced at me quickly before turning back to Porter. She's fine. Minor scratches, but she's good, he uttered. I just hope your fiancé isn't rabid. I could hear Sheila snorting from afar and I glared at her. She just shrugged and showed me a peace sign. Crazy best friend. Porter clenched his jaw. "I don't have a fiancé," he said in a low, serious baritone, the kind of voice that made me tremble in fear. Elliot smirked. Porter pursed his lips in a thin line. He then slowly turned to me and looked at me from head to toe. "Are you okay?" he asked me softly, very different from the tone he used while talking to Elliot. I want to laugh now because I could remember him chickening out when it comes to Elliot before, but now he's first enough to look at him. I could remember him telling me that he's scared of what Elliot would think about our relationship. He's finally gotten more nerves and guts now. "I'm good," I said as I looked away because I can no longer handle his stare at me. I could already feel my heart beating louder and louder the longer I stare at his eyes, and I don't want him to know that. It's been so hard for me to accept the fact that I still have feelings for him. I can't have another hard moment before my revenge settles in. I might lose my whole mind. I could hear Porter sighing hard in front of me when Elliot cleared his throat. "It's late," my cousin said. "You should go." I looked at Elliot and I can see him narrowing his eyes at Porter. But then, Porter doesn't really seem threatened at all. Porter turned to me. "You should rest now," he told me. "It's been a hard day." I pursed my lips in a thin line before nodding. I need him out of here because I am already going crazy thinking that he's here and he's so close to Paul. "You should go home," I told him as calmly as I could. Porter looked at me tenderly. I can see his eyes softening as he gazed at me. He heaved a heavy sigh before nodding. "Okay," he replied. "Go inside first." He nodded at the door and then looked at Elliot. "I'm coming back tomorrow morning." Elliot's brow furrowed. "What?" he asked in confused tone. Porter rolled his eyes. "I never pegged you for a deaf man, Castro," he said in a much confident tone. "I said I'm coming by again tomorrow," he repeated before looking at me again. "Do you have somewhere to go tomorrow?" My eyes widened while I can clearly hear Sheila laughing from afar. I wanted to glare at her, but my eyes just couldn't seem to get off of Porter's gaze. It's as if he's entrapped me inside his gaze. "You're not allowed to date my cousin," Elliot chimed in. Porter gave him a lazy look. "Doesn't mean I can't date her," he replied with a whole new kind of a different audacity. Elliot glared at him. "I am her only family," he uttered with emphasis on all the words. Porter narrowed his eyes at him. "No, you're not," he contradicted. Elliot's lips parted and my eyes widened. Porter raised his brow. "Gracila has a son, so technically, you're not his only family." He looked at me. I shut my eyes and sighed hard. Now I really believe that I am already doomed. I am not going to be able to sleep tonight knowing that Porter already knows that I have a son. He already has an idea of Paul's existence. Elliot was already glaring at Porter and Sheila was already walking towards me as well. She grabbed my elbow and pulled me closer to her. "Holy shit, he knows?" she hissed, shamelessly like Porter isn't standing inches from all of us. I blinked angrily at her as I slightly pinched her side. "Who's the father?" he asked all of us. "Where is the father?" Elliot moved to the front, closer to Porter, seemingly overprotective. "And why do you think you have to know?" he asked in a voice dripping with anger. Porter sneered at him. "I want to date your cousin Elliot. I want to marry her. So I have to know who the father of her child is so I could teach him a lesson on how to treat a woman right. He gritted his teeth as he looked at me. He didn't speak a word, but his eyes spoke everything that I need to know. And it doesn't help that my heart is already beating fast and loud with what he just said. He's been so consistent. He's been telling me this for a long time now, and I can't really deny the fact that I am really starting to believe that he's not bluffing at all. Elliot grabbed his collar and Sheila shrieked. I walked to them and tried to stop my cousin from what he's doing to Porter, but then he is so strong that I couldn't do anything at all. What are you saying, huh? Marry my cousin? No, the father of her child? Are you fucking out of your mind? He yelled at him before pulling Porter closer, tightening the grip of his collar. Porter didn't seem like he's backing out at all. He's looking at my cousin with such great confidence that I think I am already about to die in anxiety on what my cousin to do to Porter now. Because I know that as much as he doesn't loathe him as much as I do, he hates him enough to kill him because of making me suffer while I am pregnant with our child. Do you fucking think you have a right, you asshole? You don't. Elliot lunged at him. You're not worthy of my cousin. Never will be. I sighed and asked Elliot to calm down. I held his hand and that made him look at me. Stop it, Elliot, I told him calmly. Sheila also helped now and tried to pull Elliot away by hooking her arm around his other arm and pulling him away from Porter. Come on, Elliot. You don't want the kid to wake up due to your incessant shouting. She hissed, but it was loud enough for all of us here. Porter looked at me with his jaw ticking in anger. I'm going to know who the damn man is, Graciela, he told me with a voice laced with promise. I looked at him with lips parted. Porter, I said, sighing because I am already tired and beat for the day. It's been a long, long day and I don't even know if it is still nighttime or if the clock has already struck past 12. Just go home, I begged Porter. And I am silently praying that my son wouldn't wake up right in this moment. But then, I could hear Linda yelling Paul's name from inside the house. My heart automatically raced incredibly faster as I looked at Sheila for help, but it was already too late because Paul was already standing by the door in his Iron Man pajamas while rubbing his eyes. I looked at him in horror and definitely because Porter is beside me and I can sense that he's still in his spot. Mommy! Paul's cute voice was the only one that we could hear. When he spotted me, he immediately smiled widely and started running towards me. I couldn't move. I feel like my whole body is paralyzed. Sheila and Elliot were also stoned on their places. Paul giggled as he hugged me tight. He looked up to me and grinned. Why are you outside? He asked. Holy fuck! I could hear Porter muttering under his breath as Paul looked at him. Bad, he said as he pointed at Porter. I braved myself and gave Porter a look, and there I saw him staring at our child like he is too mesmerized to see him. And I am not stupid to not know that he already has an idea who Paul's father is. It is undeniable. Paul frowned at him. Don't say bad words, my son scolded Porter. Porter's lips parted with his eyes wide as he stared at Paul. He was out of words before looking at me. Tears already stung my eyes as I looked away. Now, I am doomed. Absolutely doomed. Elliot, get Paul, Sheila said when silence was all that enveloped the atmosphere. Porter was so speechless, but his eyes are only on Paul. He's looking at him like he's examining him, like he is looking something in him. My son is confusedly blinking at Porter because he's a stranger to him. Elliot came to get Paul, but Porter stopped him. Porter held his arm and shook his head at my cousin while he looked at him with a piercing gaze. "Don't," Porter mumbled in a tight jaw before looking back at Paul, who looks even more confused now because of what's happening. Paul tugged my dress, and that made me stare at him. He's staring at me with an unusual frown on his face. "I'm sleepy, Mommy," he pouted. I sighed and looked at Porter. "He's sleepy," I told him. Porter's jaw clenched and his stare at me lingered for a while before reluctantly nodding. I took a sigh of relief when I saw his sign of agreeing. I smiled and caressed my son's face. "Go inside. Uncle Elliot and Aunt Sheila will tuck you to bed, okay?" I told him softly. "Mommy will talk too." I bit my lip because I can't find the right word to say. "Him?" Paul pointed at Porter. I nodded. "Yes, I need to talk to him first. I'll follow you after." Paul looked at Porter once more before taking Elliot's hand and walking inside the house with Sheila following behind them. I am already freezing on my spot when Porter and I were left alone in the pathway. I could hear his heavy breathing as my heart beat loudly and pounded heavily against my chest. Pain is all I could feel now. The look on Porter's eyes as he watched Paul sent a million daggers to my chest. I might not have planned for them to meet in this lifetime, but the look on his face made me regret that I kept him away from Paul. I braved myself and slowly looked at Porter, and there I was welcomed by his intense stare with a strain of pain and unshed tears. His jaw is clenched and his lips are pursed. "Care to tell me something?" Anger and pain both drip in his voice. My breathing automatically hitched as I gulped hard. His anger eyes are directed at me, and as much as I want to look away, I feel like my gaze is already attached to his. "Porter." My voice was so soft because I don't really know how to start telling him. I want to tell him the truth, but my mind seemed to have malfunctioned, and now I can't do anything about it. I stood there, flabbergasted and mind-crazed. I feel like I am at lost not only for words but for everything. Porter's stare just persists through my whole being that I know can never recover. He exhaled harshly, but he never spoke to me. He looked up and shut his eyes forcefully before landing his gaze on me again. My eyes widened when I saw his eyes red with a trace of tears. He shut his eyes again and looked away. This time, he turned his back on me as he looked down while his fingers wiped his eyes. The pain in my chest almost unbearable while seeing him this way. I know I have always wanted him to hurt more than he's hurt me, so I should be happy now. But then why? Why do I feel like my heart is breaking like it hasn't broke before? "Porter," I called him and he shook his head. I can see his shoulders shaking and his soft sobs. Tears stung my eyes as I watched his back shaking like that. "He's crying, and I am the reason. I'm sorry," I managed to sob, hoping that it would be enough for him to stop crying. True enough, he stopped sobbing, but then he angrily looked at me and stepped closer. "Sorry?" he asked in disbelief. That's all I'm getting? Sorry? My lips parted as I looked at him. Eyes are red with traces of tears, furrowed brows with a raging gaze. I could already feel my system trembling in fear. I've never seen him mad. I have never had him raising his voice at me with this intensity. He shook his head as his jaw tightened. Now, what the hell was that? His is beyond angry. We have a son? Come on, Gracila. Tell me, is he my son? I winced and then gulped. I stared at him for a little longer than I had to. Tell me. His voice thundered. My shoulders jumped in surprise and fear of his voice. Tears fell down my cheeks before I could get to nod at his question. Son of a bitch, he cursed out loud as he stepped away from me. He turned his back at me as he left his head and rubbed his palms on his face. His chest is rising up and down as he breathed deeper and deeper. I'm sorry, I croaked as I began to sob. Porter looked at me in disbelief, but then, when he saw me already crying hard, his gaze softened. He took a deep breath. Why? He asked as he was trying to calm himself. Why did you not tell me? His voice cracked. I wiped my tears and gathered all my courage to look at him once again, despite my broken soul. I don't want you to know. Fucking sh-, he yelled as he kicked the first thing he could kick on the ground. I shut my eyes. I am hurt with all of this, but if I am going to talk to him about our child, then I want to be honest. I don't want to give him sugar-coated excuses because he doesn't deserve lies now. He has already seen Paul. He's already seen their uncanny resemblance. Why? What did I do to deserve this from you, huh? He pointed at me using his index finger. Motherfucking shit. He cursed in the wind as he looked away again, trying to calm himself down. I walked towards him. I wanted to hug him, but I don't really know how. I don't know what I can do to ease his pain, but in all honesty, I don't think there is something that could stop the pain now. I want to tell him everything that would calm him down. I want to tell him kind and sweet words, but I don't want him to believe in lies again. He looked up with eyes forcefully shut before facing me. His eyes pierced through my whole being as I stood there in front of him. However, unlike a few moments ago, his gaze is different. It's as if he's realized something. What's his full name? He asked in a calm manner. I swallowed hard. Paul Alexander Fowler, I answered with utmost fear. Porter pursed his lips in a thin line before nodding. When is his birthday? January 5, 2015. He took a deep breath and stayed quiet. He's not speaking, but his eyes are almost looking for my soul as he stared at me. Was it hard when he was growing up? My lips parted at his unexpected question. It was as if a warm hand held my hand with the way his voice sounded when he asked me that. Yes, I sighed. To be honest, it was extremely hard. I was not prepared to have Paul. I was not accustomed to having him, but when I knew about my pregnancy, I was more of excited than afraid. But still, it was hard without the father. Porter clenched his jaw and took a step closer to me. Can you explain to me everything, Gracila? He asked in a calm manner. Because no matter how I see it, I feel so offended that you haven't told me about our son all these years. I I wasn't planning to. I bit my lip and looked away. Porter's hand went to my face and directed my gaze back to his eyes again. Pain is etched on his gaze, and no matter how I tried to unsee it, I couldn't. It's there. The pain, the longing, the misery that I am putting him in now. "Did you hate me that much?" he asked in a very soft whisper, but I feel my heart being ripped open. Hate him? I don't think so. Or maybe I did, because I love him and I felt really disappointed in him. I hated him because I expected him better. I expected him to be the man for me, but it turns out that he isn't. I stared deep inside him until I saw him leaning towards me and giving me a passionate kiss. My eyes widened when I felt him kissing me like he was accounting for all the years that we've wasted. Longing, pain, suffering, and doubts. Everything was cleared because of the way he is kissing me right now. His hand went to the back of my neck and slightly pulled my hair so he could lift my face up. I gasped in his mouth, making his tongue enter my small cavern. My hands held onto his shirt for support because my knees are all jelly and wobbly. His kisses drained all the energy left in me. He must have noticed that because he wrapped his arm around my waist and pulled me closer to his body as he bore my whole weight. His head tilted as he kissed me in all angles possible. He sucked my lower lip and pulled me body against his. "You're not going to leave me again," he said in a whisper. "I'm not gonna allow you to leave me again." I opened my eyes and was welcomed by his tender and caring stare. "But," he shook his head. "No buts, Graciela," he interjected. "You have to tell me everything about our son before he wakes up in the morning." My eyes widened. "What?" He narrowed his eyes at me. "That's the only thing I am asking you to do for now. You hide our son away from me all his life, Graciela. I deserve to know him now, and you have to do it tonight." I gulped and nodded. "Okay." I asked Porter to sit on the dining table. He was quiet while we were inside Elliot's house. It's as if he's in his deep thoughts or something. He's looking down his fiddled fingers with his piercing stare. I opened the fridge and reluctantly looked at Porter. "Do you want water?" I asked him silently. He slowly turned to me before shaking his head. "He doesn't want water, but I need one, so I'm going to get one." I took one bottle of Elliot's unending supply of sparkling water before walking towards the table and sitting across Porter. He's still not looking at me, and I don't know if that's a good or bad thing because right now I can't see his eyes and I can't read what he's thinking. I opened the bottle of sparkling water and drank from it. I shut my eyes as I swallowed the liquid. Porter sighed and looked at me with an unreadable expression. "When did you know that you were pregnant?" he asked. I immediately looked down at the bottle in my hands. "Before I left," I replied softly. "Motherfuck." He cursed softly, but I still winced because of it. I want to be honest. Her is honest. It may be hard and harsh, but this is what honest means. This is how honest is supposed to be. "You really didn't want to tell me," he stated. I slowly lifted my gaze up and met his. I want to deny, but I already told him I never wanted him to know about my son. And besides, denying is lying. I don't want to lie. I don't want to lie to anyone anymore. He took a deep breath, and because his hands are on the table, I can see them clenching tightly. He took another deep breath before unclenching his fist. Who helped you when you were pregnant? Our Aunt Lailani, I replied. I was under her care for 5 whole years before coming back here. He pursed his lips in a thin line. Did you see other men? He asked with a reluctant tone. And the way he said the last words, I felt like he was restraining something from coming out of his mouth. My heart almost stopped beating at his question. I can only remember a while back that he's asking me who the father of my son is, that he was so willing to marry me even after knowing that I already have a son. That thought warmed my heart. But does he still want to marry me now? Now that I have done him the biggest lie of his lifetime? I tried, I replied softly. As much as it is difficult for me to acknowledge the fact that I wanted to find the right man for me when I was away from here, I needed to tell him the truth. But I've realized that I've lost interest. Porter looked at me attentively. When I was pregnant with Paul, I was almost always crying every night. I kept questioning why I had to face pregnancy that way, why I had to be pregnant during the times that I was rock bottom. I looked at Porter nervously. I was not emotionally and mentally stable. I was afraid that the baby would suffer because of my own demons. And I don't want that to happen. I paused as I blinked back the tears. I took a deep breath and swallowed the lump in my throat. It was hard when I was pregnant with Paul, but it was even harder when I gave birth. Porter narrowed his eyes at me and I can see his jaw clenching at my words. When I gave birth, I had this condition called postpartum depression. I started, but then I saw Porter's fist clenching on top of the table. I tried my hardest to ignore that gesture of his. I didn't want to see Paul. I hated hearing his cry. I hated nursing him, so I had to use a pump so he could still drink my breast milk. I sighed as I reminisced those dark times of my life. How long did it last? He asked silently, but I can hear desperation and anger from his voice. I bit my lower lip. About a week, I replied unsure. All that week, I was getting sessions from the psychiatrist. It was so hard for me to sleep. I couldn't eat. I didn't want to come out and ambulate. I was literally inside my room, mopping around. I smiled weakly as I wiped the tears that escaped. After 5 sessions with the psychiatrist, I already have been feeling better. I was able to hold Paul finally, little by little. I was already accepting my role as a mother. I heard him curse softly and I just smiled. It was hard, yes, but I love him and he was my motivation. As a matter of fact, I don't think I would be able to reach where I am now if it wasn't for him. Porter let out a heavy sigh that felt like he's been holding his breath for so long. Porter, I continued, I'm really sorry for not letting you know. I believe you are ruthless and that made me decide to never let Paul meet you. He looked away and wiped the tears from his eyes. I was so mad at you. I'm sure you know that. I lost everything, and you were in the middle of it all. I couldn't believe I am telling him all this so calmly. I never imagined our confrontation to be this quiet. I have always imagined myself yelling at him like I did for the past few times, so I am really surprised now. Porter looked at me with bloodshot eyes. His nose is also already red because he has been crying just like me. And above all that, His eyes mirrored the pain he was feeling inside. Do you have his baby pictures? He asked calmly. His eyes are looking at me, so full of hope and desperation. I parted my lips. I left them at home, I said. Home? He raised his brow. In the Philippines, I mean. His jaw clenched. Are you planning on going back there? I sighed. I don't know. Maybe. I replied, unsure. It was not bad living there. He furrowed his brow at me. What do you mean? Do you want our son to live in a foreign place? I swallowed. Paul grew up there. He can even speak their language. I replied in a small voice as I looked down. No, he said firmly, and that made me bring back my gaze at him. No, you're not going anywhere. Not without me, he said as he held my stare like something has been renewed inside him. My lips parted as I looked at him. He shook his head. It was already you who said that it's hard living without me. Now, I'm here. You don't have to do it all alone. You have me. My whole system stopped at his words. He's speaking like he wants me, us, to be a family. Is that what he means? You will have me. Do you understand? He asked as he leaned closer on the table. I blinked a few times before realizing what's happening. He's leaning so closely that his lips are only a few inches from mine. You won't ever leave me again, he whispered in a husky voice before placing his hand on the back of my neck, pulling me in for a quick kiss. I leaned away from him. It's late, I said as I stood up already panicking. We have shared too many kisses tonight, and I am afraid that those are enough to steal my sleep away from the next few nights, because I admit it, I think about his touch every night, and it has been an antagonizing 5 years for me. I heard his deep sigh behind me. Gracila, he called as he followed me. I stood at the kitchen counter, leaning my hands near the sink. I looked at the opposite way from Porter. He's standing too close and he's even holding my waist. Can we talk about us now? He whispered as his lips touched my ear. I've missed you a lot, he said as he tucked the loose strands of my hair behind my ear. My heart immediately raced as I felt his breath fanning my neck. I swallowed hard because of his gesture and his raspy voice that he used to me before. Porter sighed and leaned his head on my shoulder. His hand is caressing my waist while my heart is beating erratically like I have been running for 100 miles per hour. Do you still not want me in your life? He asked silently before looking up and kissing my shoulder. I didn't answer because I was already busy calming myself down. The sensations he is sending me are the same as the ones he used to make me feel before. To be honest, I am not even sure if it faded or changed a bit. Don't you want a complete family for our son? He asked tenderly. The picture of a perfect family is something I have always imagined for my son and I. But then again, 5 years ago, I don't want anything to do with him. I was so blinded by hatred that I never really thought of him coming back in our lives again. But now, I slowly turned to Porter. He's staring at me with so much hope in his eyes that every doubt I have inside me seemed to have faded away. Please? His voice cracked. I bit my lip and sighed hard. I need to talk to Paul first, I told him. Relief washed over Porter's face after hearing my answer. A ghost of a smile appeared before nodding slowly. His hands went to my face and caressed my cheeks with his thumbs. Thank you, he told me, breathless and looking so different from the languid and angry beast he was just hours ago. A tear fell down his cheek. Thank you, he sobbed, and suddenly his tears were falling like a waterfall. I smiled and wiped his tears. At this very moment, I already accept the fact that I still love him. I never even thought when I stopped. Did it ever end when I was angry? Did it ever end when I was hurt? But then again, if it had ended before, I wouldn't be this affected. I wouldn't be this sore. Do you want to rest? I asked. Porter looked at me with a bit of confusion in his eyes. I don't want to go home. I bit my lower lip and gathered all the guts in me. Elliot's going to kill me in the morning, but if Porter doesn't want to go home, I would understand. You can sleep in my room, I stammered. He narrowed his eyes at me and put his head to the side. I will sleep in Paul's room. I was already panicking because his look already told me something. He pursed his lips in a thin line as he stared at me for a few seconds. Okay, he breathed out. I bit my lip. Elliot would get mad in the morning. I'm not scared of your cousin Gracila. I looked at him with wide eyes. He's not? He used to be scared of Elliot. I don't think I would ever be scared of anything other than you leaving me again, he said in a straightforward way that shook my whole system. I almost choked on my saliva as I heard his words. I could feel all my blood rushing to my face as I looked away. What a quick turn around, Gracila. I took a deep breath to calm myself and gather all my guts, but I can't help myself to imagine how serious his face was when he uttered those words. I've never even blushed like this when he confessed to Elliot that he wasn't to marry me. I'll lead you to my room, I told him, and quickly scrambled to my room without even caring if he's following me. I stopped right in front of my door and took a deep breath before I heard footsteps behind me. I didn't have to look behind me to know who that is. The familiar manly scent was the answer. I have never encountered that kind of smell from someone else before. It was only Porter who smelled like that. I turned the knob and opened the door, and I inwardly sighed in relief that I have arranged all my stuff now. At least he wouldn't see the messy side of me. I heard the door closing and I looked at him. He's looking around the room with a serious expression on his face. He seems like my room is under observation if it is indeed conducive for living. I fiddled on my fingers, waiting for him to finish his own inspection. When his eyes met mine, I was already out of it once more. Uh, Here's the bed, I stupidly said like it isn't obvious enough. God, I want to strangle myself at this very moment. Porter blinked at me and nodded. Is it okay if I used it? He asked carefully. What? I asked, startled for no fucking reason. I mean, yes, it's okay. I let out a nervous laugh, but above all that, I want to choke myself because of how I'm actually acting in front of him right now. I feel like a high schooler in front of her fucking crush. Porter nodded and stared at the bed like he is in deep thoughts. He put his hands inside his pocket and exhaled before facing me. It's okay if you sleep in our son's room? I looked at him and nodded, but deep inside me, I am already dying. Do you want me to get some clothes for you? I asked. He narrowed his eyes at me. "You have men's clothes?" he asked in a suspicious tone. "What?" I asked in confusion before it finally dawned on me. "No, it's Elliot's." He cleared his throat and pursed his lips before looking away. I could see that he heaved a heavy sigh before turning to me again, shaking his head. "Nah, I'm good," he said. "I'll call my secretary and ask him to bring me clothes when the sun comes up." I nodded slowly and then turned to my closet to change my clothes in Paul's bedroom. Porter was sitting on the edge of the bed while watching me, and that made me very uncomfortable. I don't even know why he has to do that, but I couldn't bring myself to tell him to stop. Probably because I literally couldn't handle looking at him at this moment. When I got the things I need, I smiled awkwardly at Porter. "I'm going to Paul's bedroom," I said as I started to walk to the door without even waiting for his reply. "Where's his bedroom?" he suddenly asked just when I was about to turn the doorknob. I turned to him. "Do you wanna see?" I asked. A glint of happiness and excitement flashed in his face before standing up. "Yes," he replied. I shrugged at him and opened the door, very ready to show him where Paul's room is. It is not that far from my room, though. It's only 2 doors from mine because we have 2 guest rooms in between our rooms. I already told Elliot that I can stay in the guest room so I could be nearer to Paul, but he refused. He said he already prepared my room so I needed to stay there and used it. I stopped in front of Paul's door. "This is his room," I said before turning to Porter. Porter looked at the door. I opened it and it showed the Iron Man themed room and our son sleeping tightly under his Iron Man blankets. I walked inside and I thought Porter was following, but when I looked back, he was still at the door, staring intently at our son. "Come inside," I whispered quietly, but Porter shook his head. Fear and anxiety are evident on his face, with a mix of slight excitement as he watched our son. He's looking so confused on what to do. "Come on," I insisted. "It's okay. He won't wake up." Porter gulped hard before coming inside the room as silently as he could. He stood beside me and we both watched Paul sleeping. "He loves Iron Man," he said. "He does," I confirmed. He nodded. "So I'm gonna have his room converted into this then," he whispered. I looked at him, questioning because I don't really believe what I just heard from him. "You have a room for him?" I asked in shock. He smiled weakly and nodded. "When I knew you have a son, I already converted one of the rooms in the house as his room." My lips parted at what he just said. He didn't even know Paul is his son, but he already accepted him and converted a room for him. A warm feeling enveloped my chest as I looked at him in awe. I was unable to speak because I was caught by surprise. He sighed, not letting go of Paul on his side. "Do you think he will accept me?" he asked me. I bit my lip. I remember that time when Paul asked me if his daddy and I are communicating because that's what his grandma said. That moment was the time I realized that Paul never asked about his dad from me because he thought I was in continuous contact with him. That was the reason why he never asked for his daddy. He never mentioned about his dad before because he already knew he has one that's far away. I smiled. "I think so," I replied. "He will," I repeated in a more positive light. Porter looked at me. I hope so, he said in a stern voice while his eyes pierced through my soul. I smiled. He will, I said, because I know Paul will accept him for sure.